Well, and I think as a parent, you've never done this before. So you're just thinking, what am I doing? What does this child need? Am I accommodating them because I think that it's helping them right now? And then I realize, geez, now I can't get them to school. And, then you feel bad about yourself. And it can be quite a vicious cycle. So I think it's just, what do I have control over? What is getting in the way? And who is my support network?
Welcome to This Way Up, the podcast dedicated to supporting parents and caregivers navigating the complex world of mental health. I'm Andrea, and each episode we dive deep into the conversations that matter, exploring the challenges, triumphs, and transformative journeys of those facing mental health struggles within their families. Whether you're here for expert advice, inspiring stories, or just a little boost to get you through the day, we've got you covered. So grab a cup of coffee, kick back, and join us as we find the bright spots in the mental health journey, because we're all climbing our way up together. Welcome back to This Way Up. I'm going to be honest here. There were many times when my kids were young, and actually early in my marriage, before I even had kids, I would think life would be so much easier if I could just do it all by myself and I didn't have to manage any other relationship. But then I would quickly realize that it would also be very lonely and not very rewarding. But let's be real. There are complexities to raising kids, especially higher needs kids or kids that are in a higher needs moment, raising it with a partner, whether it be your marital partner or a grandmother or a friend, and also complexities arising around managing multiple kids in a family, sibling dynamics. Well, today's guest is Michelle McVittie. She is a child life specialist, parenting coach, and author with over 2 decades experience working with families in the pediatric medical and mental health settings, and she is here to help. She shares insightful and practical tips on how to best manage family dynamics to bring unity to the family and make life just a little bit easier. So let's welcome Michelle. Today, we are joined by Michelle McVittie, who is going to give us a ton of great nuggets on family dynamics, which I think anyone in any situation can really relate to, whether they've got somebody who's struggling with mental health or not. Family dynamics is complex. So Michelle, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Well, thank you for having me. I am Michelle. My business is called Mom the Manager because I'm the manager of my home. It wasn't always that way, but through life experience and my work experience, I want to help parents feel a little more in control. Some children are just more work. So, right? Yes. So I'm a child life specialist and a parenting coach. I've worked in pediatric medical and mental health for over 2 decades. So I have in child and youth mental health, I see the children and the families that are really struggling. I don't see the children. I see the families. And that's where I see the magic of parent coaching. And I created my business because people want service now. People don't want to wait on wait lists. And while we're waiting on wait lists, what are we doing? And not everybody qualifies to see a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker. So what do we do for those families? Nothing? No, I was not okay with that. And I believe everybody deserves support. And I give parents ideas, practical tips that are free, that are one-on-one, that are on-demand parenting programs, and I have Facebook groups. So it's really to support people right now and build community.
Well, any behavior is reinforced by repetition. So as a family, if you start seeing some behaviors popping up, but they're not tragic or so, traumatic that you're going to run to the hospital to try to get help, you're out there trying to manage things and control things, but yet you may be unintentionally reinforcing behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure, isn't it, on parents?
It is.
We really have to try to figure it all out and then you go into the world of social media where everybody is an expert and everybody has their own experience and wants to give advice or tell you what you should be doing. And then who do I talk to that's actually going to give me the correct information and without needing to wait and wait and wait to be asked these questions, to really be assessed? Do I need an assessment? Do we need to do more? How do I know if my child needs something? And then I go to Dr. Google and it's like, oh my goodness, what is going on? We do the best that we can, but like to your point, what is helping? Is it helpful or unhelpful?
Well, and our kids don't come with a manual. And I thought by raising I would have one and then I would be an expert for number two because I had so much practice. And what I realized was number two was nothing like number one. And I would try one thing on the first one and it didn't work on the second one. And then, the dynamics of personalities between husbands and wives and siblings, it's just so complex.
Yes. And that's why we're talking about family dynamics, because like I said, like parent coaching, there's so much magic in it because you cannot change your child, but you can change how you respond. And it's really making sure that you are in control of the situation. And what I mean by that is that you're planning ahead. You are checking in with your emotion and your triggers and setting a plan up, because your 5-year-old, your 15-year-old, they're not going to be like, let's do this. Let's figure this out. They're looking to you. And if you are in distress, if you are responding with, anger and frustration or just shutting down and saying, forget it, have the ice cream before dinner. I'm just done. And then one parent does one thing and the other parent does something else. It's confusing. And then you can see more behavior. And your world just is like a snow globe of stress. And you think, how am I going to get out of here?
Yeah. So let's say that you've got a child who is struggling, maybe they've been diagnosed, maybe they haven't, but you certainly know that something is going on. It's more than just your daily, little bit of anxiety. It's gone beyond that. And you've got a family of 3 kids and a husband and a dog and yourself. What are some things that you can implement to help bring unity to the family and create really the best situation for every member of the family?
Oh, man, that's a lot of pressure. One thing to do. There's so many things to do.
I know.
I think what you're going to do is you're going to step back and say, what are the barriers? What are my daily and weekly struggles? And let's start with that. Where there is, I feel like structure is number one. When children know what to expect, they understand that I have to do this and I have to do this, and that my parent is not so stressed out that if I need some help, I can get some help. But really, we want to build independence. We want to build structure. Children like to know what to expect, and you don't want to be doing all the task initiation and the nagging and the reminding and doing all that. It just creates more chaos. And then it says to that child, you can't do these things. Or if you do it wrong, I'm going to step in and fix it for you, or I'm going to get frustrated. So the number one piece is what's going on here? How am I responding? Do I need to fix? Do I need to do this? Am I responding in a way that isn't helpful? And then really assessing what are the daily and weekly struggles that are happening, and do I have systems or structure in place to take away some of that struggle, like a morning routine or a calm down corner that is part of the routine, maybe before they go to school and when they come home. It's a lot of work, but you just have to start with one thing.
So it's interesting because when you first started speaking and you said structure, of course, I'm nodding my head saying perfect. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, if you've got a child or children that are struggling, that daily plan or structure can go haywire in a minute. And then the trickle effects happen to the rest of the family because now their structure has been tilted. But one thing I heard at the very end with you was have the calm down corner or build into that structure a place to allow yourself some padding when the structure isn't perfect.
Correct. Yes. Well, and what you're saying is, let's say out of 3 children, one is struggling. The other 2 know what to expect. The other 2 can still continue going on, and you don't feel like you have to parent everybody, depending on the age. Now, if you've got 3 and 5 and 6-year-old, that's a little tougher, but there are some 3-year-olds that are like, I got this. I know I need to get my backpack. I can make my own toast. I'm going to do this. And you're going to acknowledge that while I go and spend time with the other child to calm down. We might be late, but we're going to get to school. Now, if this is happening on a regular basis, then we really need to step back to say, how are we going to do things? And I might need some help here, or what's the best way to help this child?
Okay, so we've got structure and really evaluating what your week looks like. What's next? Now you've got the blow up, let's say.
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to how you respond. So remembering that as well, right? So what are my triggers? How do I respond? A lot of times children learn what they live. And we kind of go back to the way we were brought up. And you can't speak to me that way. I would have never talked to my mother that way. This is disrespectful. I have to teach a lesson in this moment. Or I don't know what to do. I'm feeling helpless. I don't know how to react. So understanding that and being able to pause a little bit and knowing that co-regulation is key here. Validating is helpful, but like fixing or trying to justify or trying to like sweep it under the rug, not helpful, right? So I need to be calm, just like with a colicky baby. You cannot be vibrating and trying to soothe the baby. It's the same thing with your kids. So when I know what my triggers are, I know what's going on, let's take that pause. What do they need right now? And usually you're helping them ride that wave of discomfort and just let it ride out. Because when you're like, here we go again, we're going to be late again. My boss is going to fire me, or like, enough is enough. We've done this. Like, why can't this kid figure it out? Then we respond in a certain way. And then your child responds a certain way. And then we have that cycle. So how can you check in with yourself?
I like that term you said, co-regulate, where we're not just regulating them, we're regulating ourselves as well.
Yeah. And it's together with them. Like we are really needing to help them ride the wave of discomfort. That co-regulation is something that some parents have a hard time with. So that's why it's important that you have a tag team if possible. Or even somebody like grandma. Let's call grandma, because grandma can really validate right now when I feel like my head's about to pop off. So let's call grandma. And then grandma can talk to the child. And it's really just about being in someone's space and being okay with their emotion and not trying to give them advice or telling them they're fine. It's just like, yeah, this is really hard right now. I'm trying to understand where you're coming from.
It's so hard because I think in human nature, we want to help, we want to fix. And I think as a parent, we are somewhat conditioned to want to protect our child, relieve them of that discomfort, but then to go back and pause and say, as you said, I'm going to let this ride out. I'm going to let them feel this discomfort. And that's really building self-confidence with them that this will end. It's not going to go on forever.
You're right, because emotion comes up and then it comes down. But if we rescue them when they're at the top, we don't teach them that it will come down. So when you are protecting them, you're actually not preparing them. You're stopping them from building their own resiliency. We have to train the brain. How do we learn how to do that? By doing the hard stuff and saying, I've got this. Because bouncing back and being resilient is about learning from bad experiences, is from saying, this was a really hard day, but I can do this to turn it down a notch. Or this was a bad day, but it doesn't mean, or this was a bad thing that happened, but 3 other things happened. That takes time. We have to work on that because their brain is under construction for 25, 30 years. depending on the neurodiversity or neurotypical brain, it's a lot.
I had a discussion with a girlfriend once, and we were trying to understand this whole anxiety piece and why our kids were so anxious. And one of the topics that came up was that teenagers never have to wait. They've been taught that everything's going to be fixed for them. So they get their grades on the internet and it says a D because they didn't turn in one assignment and they've only had 3 assignments due. It's that anxiety that, well, wait a second, you can still build that up because those grades are going to compile once you have more, assignments turned in. Whereas when we were children, we didn't know what the heck. We got a D. We were like, oh God. Or you just like hit it and just didn't even look at it. But then you didn't know the direct impact of what was happening in that moment. So you had to just let it out. You had to wait till the end of the semester for your grades. You had to, if you got in a conflict with a friend, you may not have been able to talk to them right away. You weren't able to get all of your stuff out on a text. It just kind of you had to wait. And so you learned that eventually things turn out. If they're not perfect, they're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. There's a lot of things. We're overstimulated. How many of us have the TV on? We've got our laptop on and we're on our phone at the same time, right? Even as adults, like we are just overstimulated, lots of things going on. I can see on Instagram that my friends went somewhere this weekend and I wasn't invited. I can instantly respond to somebody on a comment. How many times have I read, Facebook of adults that are just like raging at each other and there's no pause button. We are in this kind of, you can buy shredded cheese. You don't even have to shred your own cheese. So let's just, get everything done right now. And patience is a virtue. But where do children learn that? Where do kids learn how to do these things? It's from our parents, because if they forget their lunch, then do we drop off McDonald's? If they forget, or if there's no, I don't know, they forget to do a project, are we dropping everything to run and help them? What would our parents have done? Yeah, no, well, I don't know. You got to figure that out, kid, because there's no dollar stores when we were kids. It was just like, well, the store's closed and they're closed at 5. There's no 9 o'clock things opening. There's a lot of accessibility, a lot of things going on. And how much are we feeding into that as well? I think our technology does not help. But what control do you have as a parent with saying, yeah, we're going to wait. We're going to wait on that.
Other than structure for your other kids, let's say you've got one child who is consuming so much of your time and energy, and quite frankly, the energy of the family. What can you do to help those other children understand and ride that wave with their sibling that may be higher needs?
That's really tough. But if you've got a sibling that's really struggling, and then we're going to our 10-year-old or our 15-year-old or anybody to say they're struggling, so you've just got to wait. That's a really tough sell. And some of these kids are like, this sibling is annoying. And parent, you're not doing a great job. So I'm going to start parenting, or I'm going to start giving them a hard time because their behavior runs this household. So instead of being like, we need to accommodate, we can have compassion, but we also, as a parent, have to have compassion for that child that, I know you have to wait, and I'm really going to try to find some time. We're going to bring grandma in so I can spend time with you, for example, or we're going to try to do things a little bit differently, because I notice that you get up and you go to school on your own. And I'm so proud of you that you do that. I know I can rely on you to get up and do that. And I don't tell you enough. Those are the kinds of things that we want to focus on as well, because we do want to say, let's say the child has anxiety. Well, things are a little bit harder for them. And I know it may seem like maybe we're giving in. We just can't take things too quickly. We have to go slowly and gradually. But I know this is really frustrating because you really wanted to do that thing, or I wasn't able to go with you to do that project or whatever because I had to take care of your brother or sister. And I know that can be really hard. So it's really about them helping them understand a little bit, but being mindful that they're kids and that if their sibling is struggling with a learning disability, a chronic illness, a mental illness, these are things that are part of who they are. It isn't who they are. It's not their label. And what is out of their control and what is within their control, and how can we best support them that we're not completely accommodating the one child and expecting that everybody kind of just is okay with that.
It's got to be so hard to be a child that has a high needs sibling.
Yes.
Because that's a complex emotion. And, it's, you've really got to be advanced to have a very empathetic heart. I think they can handle it for some ways, but a lot of ways their needs aren't being met either.
Yeah. And I think it's tough as a parent too. I mean, if you're parenting with somebody, it might be a little bit easier because you can tag team. If you're solo parenting, then you really need to see who is part of my team here. And your energy can only go so far, but that's where those systems and structures are in place, because your mental illness, your chronic illness, or your learning disability does not mean you cannot do. It just means that we need to learn to accommodate your needs to help you take steps forward, and not to say, well, you have a mental illness, so we're just going to stay home. So you don't have to do that thing. It's like, well, you might not be able to do the full hour, but we're going to try at 15. Then we're going to do 25. Then we're going to do, the full hour eventually. We're not just saying, no, everybody step back, leave this kid alone. We don't want to do that either. And I'm not implying that the listeners are doing that, but I think from a child's, a sibling point of view, they may see it that way.
Well, and you bring up a great point in that it's not fair parenting from a child's perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is that they, we would like to say that we could parent every child the same way and everything would be fair. And it's exasperated when you have a child that is higher needs at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and I think as a parent, you've never done this before. So you're just thinking, what am I doing? What does this child need? Am I accommodating them because I think that it's helping them right now? And then I realize, geez, now I can't get them to school. And, then you feel bad about yourself. And it can be quite a vicious cycle. So I think it's just, what do I have control over? What is getting in the way? And who is my support network? Because you can go to Dr. Google, you can put it out on a Facebook group, or do you have those trusted people that are going to help you? Now, I have Facebook groups, but I am monitoring them. I'm watching what people say, because there is a lot of people that are out there that give you your opinion, and it's really bad advice. Really bad advice. Yeah.
I always try to say, in my opinion, because I am not Dr. Andrea. Okay, so we've got the kids. And we've got yourself. Now you bring in the partner, whether it be a spouse, a parent of yours that's helping. And we all have our very, I would hate to say rigid, but I'm going to say rigid ways that we think things need to be done. And those don't align. How do you preserve that partnership and work through so that you're in the best interest of your high needs child, the rest of your child, and the relationship that you've got with that other person?
I know. Yes.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot. And I talk about this as the good cop, bad cop situation that comes up that is not helpful. So instead, I want you to be a tag team. I want you to work together. And maybe one person is really good at validating, and the other person is really good at staying consistent and being firm. We said no, and we're going to stick to no. Everybody has their strengths, but it's really about communication and being open-minded. I see a lot of parents coming to me together, which is refreshing, that everybody is part of this. And sometimes parents see things very differently, but you need to be willing to meet in the middle. So what does that look like? And we have to be flexible. And flexibility does not mean that you are giving in. Flexibility is not saying this person's manipulating me. This is saying, hey, I'm going to listen to you. Now you listen to me. And how do we make it work together? And that might mean a little bit of compromise. It might mean a little flexibility. But how are we taking one step forward towards our goals for building resiliency in our child?
That sounds so easy.
I know.
As a mother and wife of children that had some higher needs at times, I will tell you it was a very rough road for us. Now, we made it through.
Yeah, good.
And I will say, looking back, and I've told my mom this, I don't know how many times. My mom, by the way, is one of my best friends, is that if I was alone and I raised my kids, they'd probably be a bunch of monkeys. If my husband raised them, they'd be soldiers. And now looking back, that worked to their advantage because now they're very fun, playful little soldiers. But you mentioned earlier, where are your strengths? My strength was let's bring out the fun in things. Let's cut the tension. Let's do this. My husband's strength was, more straight and narrow. You've got it. You can't always have fun. So I don't necessarily know we did that intentionally, nor did we do it smoothly because like I said, it was, some hairy times there. But looking back, you're absolutely right. Each one of us had a strength.
Yeah.
And how can we capitalize on that? But then also not, I think, one of the things that I probably did was get very frustrated because he was so rigid, and he probably got so very frustrated that I was not so rigid. And that created tension, and the kids saw it, they just do. So.
Well, I think it's the communication where if you are feeling defensive or somebody is coming at you and saying you give in to them all the time, no wonder they're acting this way. Then you just get your back up and you're like, well, you were just so strict. You would just take everything out of their rooms and you think that's going to work. That's old school. We're not doing it that way. And well, you're doing it this marshmallow way. And that's why our kids are soft, right? I hear a lot of that. So instead, we have to shift our mindset and say, we need to communicate. We need to be open and not attack each other and not give up. That was the main thing that I got from what you said, is that you didn't give up and that life and relationships are not easy. We were brought up in certain ways. Emotions and expectations were very high when we were growing up. You had to be a certain way. You had to act a certain way. Do not be. And now we have children that sometimes become jerks in our house. They tell us exactly how it is, but that means that they feel safe to do that. And instead of just being blind soldiers that just listen, we've got kids that have to learn to communicate nicely. I'm not saying that they should be rude, but sometimes it comes out that way, but at least they can feel heard. And then we can go back later to say, hey, that didn't go so well. You can be angry, but you can't yell at me. You can be angry, but you can't swear or whatever that is. But you're communicating and I'm hearing you and we're going to work on this together. Very different than how we were brought up, a lot of us.
Very different than, my parents were obviously around, but I didn't feel like there was a lot of involved parenting. They were busy, they were working, they were, kids were different. We were viewed differently when we were young. And in some cases, it worked for our advantage. I think that from our generation, we can handle setbacks and those kind of things. We can handle anxiety a little bit better than this generation because we had to.
Yeah.
You're out on your bike in the middle of nowhere, you get a flat tire. We were able to be out in the middle of nowhere. We had to figure out how to get home. Now, you've got tracking devices and everything else, and your parents are there to save you. It's a whole different world.
And that's what the children learn. They don't learn that there's a different way. So that's on us again to say,
I know.
how much do I need to jump in and rescue? Do I need to know where my child is at every moment? And now you're checking to see they're supposed to be home and they're not home and they're over here. And it's like, okay, so where's the trust? What's going on? And you're driving yourself crazy. And it teaches the children that, yeah, someone's going to rescue me. Someone's going to take care of me.
Back to the partnership and such. I know I've talked to several different parents where typically it's the mother. When there is a high need, she's the one that steps in, does all of the work, and kind of cuts the other spouse out. And I say this in full transparency. I know I did that. We talked about it, my husband and I, several years later, and he said to me, I needed to be involved from the very beginning. And he said he didn't jump in to be involved, but then I cut him out as well. And I think that also creates a lot of tension and misunderstanding and division within the family. And just a piece of advice, in my opinion, is that you can't do it alone. And you need to have conversations, and you need to feel, even if you're not, you need to feel like you're burdening the other person in order to get better insight and better parenting. That's just my uncoaching advice.
So when you're working with someone, I think these are all great examples to say, one, this didn't work out so well, and what do we learn from it? And you were in survival mode. You were taking over. I need to do this thing. You're the person that's going to call 911 and just be like, you sit over there, you do that. And your husband was probably like, okay, she doesn't need me right now. So one, am I agitated about it? But she's doing okay. And I don't want to like upset this, but I'm also feeling upset and I feel out of it. And now that we have gone through it, I can now look back and say, okay, that didn't work out so well. If I was there, I could have done this and this. And that's where you learn. That's where you say, okay, this is where we could have done things differently. And that's where I'm so grateful when parents come to me, when they're not waiting and seeing, they're not trying to figure things out on their own, but there's also more accessibility to people like myself now.
Right.
Versus,
Right.
I know your kids are older, like mine are, where you were kind of like figuring things out on your own. You had to go to the library to get books, let alone like searching things on Google, right? There wasn't so much of that. Now you open up your laptop and everybody's got an opinion. And some people are very convincing at what they're saying. And then they're like, actually, they're very inaccurate, but they sound convincing.
They sound great, right? Well, and the thing is there's a lot of tips and advice that you can take as long as you are heeding it just as that, is that this may not be the end all be all, or there may be some more complexities deeper into this. I mean, just like, when we were first learning of my daughter having anxiety, I was had this weird, feeling that something wasn't going right. And I thought that it was my parenting. And so I kept looking and searching and trying to figure out what I was doing wrong as a parent. And then it was so much more than that. But we had to look beyond just what, right in front of me, trying to fix the small things. You had mentioned, I think when we were talking before, about coming from a place of curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is such relevant advice. And I'd like you to share a little bit about that. And I think it's relevant not only from perspective of your child, but also your spouse and the other children.
Well, being curious instead of judgmental, it is really tough to kind of stop that from happening, especially from past experience, what you anticipate. Maybe somebody already said something like this. We're looking at our child with judgment. We're looking at our partner with judgment. We're looking at the system with judgment. And instead, let's look at it with curiosity. Help me understand. What is this all about? What is this behavior? Why are we seeing this? And when you do that and you look at it as, what could this be? Because if we just jump to, they just want attention. They're incapable. I spoiled them. Your mother spoiled them, like whatever. We get into that judgment and say, what is actually going on with this kid? And that's why I love collaborative problem solving, because collaborative problem solving and emotion coaching, two separate things, they do work well together, is to acknowledge someone's experience and their emotion and to try to understand it. And by going in with judgment, you can't do that. You can't validate someone where you're just like, are you faking it? I don't think this is just for attention. You were fine on Tuesday and Wednesday, but now all of a sudden on Thursday, you can't go to school. Yeah, no. Right. And instead, I'm seeing a pattern. I'm seeing they're really struggling. So let's look at this differently. And same thing with even, your husband looking at you and saying, well, she just wants to take over. She just doesn't think I'm going to be much help. She thinks she knows best. He could look at it that way, or he could be like, she's in survival mode. What is going on? I need to have a chat and say, hey, we haven't chatted in like a week or 2 weeks or a month. You have been like nosedive in a book, trying to call doctors, trying to do all these things. And you haven't even talked to me about any of it. Like, what's going on?
Did you have a camera in our house? Because that was about what it looked like.
I get this a lot. I get this a lot from parents where I'll do like a role play. I do a lot of role
Yeah.
playing with like them being the parent and I'll be the kid. And they're like, are you in my house? Like the one mom was like, I can't even role play my daughter because I don't even know what she's thinking. Like, I don't even know what she would say. I don't know why she acts the way that you do. But you responding, it's like you know her.
You're like, yeah, I've been through this a few
I've been
times. Yeah.
around. Yeah. It's kind of my superpower. It's good. Yeah.
You're from Canada.
Yeah.
And obviously our health systems are a little bit different here, but I don't think they're as far off in the mental health space as we see in other areas. And when we were talking last time, you were speaking about how so many kids aren't able to get treated before it's crisis. And that just breaks my heart. I know I had a girlfriend whose daughter was cutting and she was worried about suicide and they couldn't get her into see a psychiatrist for, I think it was like 6 weeks or something. I'm like, oh my gosh, a lot can happen in 6 weeks. What advice do you give to parents? I know that your services are available, but there's only one of you and you're not all over the place. What advice do you give to parents when they start seeing something and maybe they can't get help?
Well, and I think this is the piece too, is actually one of the psychiatrists that I've worked with for many years. The message that because I've been there through some of her speaking engagements, is talking to parents to say, sometimes that waiting is the best thing. It doesn't feel like it, but when you're in crisis and I'm trying to talk to you about something, I'm trying to get you to sign in and check in with me and talk to me about what's going on. It's really tough when you are like in the deep end with holding on to like a big brick. But in that 6 weeks, we want to make sure that that child feels safe, that you have that safety plan, and that you're checking in with them. So yes, stressful as a parent, but it's saying, hey, I'm here for you, that we're in this together, that we're going to remove the sharps, that we're going to do these things. We're going to communicate with people around us because this is a process. This didn't just happen overnight. This has been going on. And this is the way that they are dealing with their distress. And it's an unhelpful way. So how do we support them to be able to have emotion? And you're going to support them. And eventually medication can help. Eventually treatment can help. But in my experience, there's a lot of kids that do not want to go to treatment. And in mental health, you cannot force a child or teenager to do treatment. So that's where, as a parenting coach, that's where I see the magic in parent education. Because a parent can go to child-led CBT, parent-led CBT, where they can learn about CBT. They can learn about their child's OCD. They can learn about DBT. Like, there's other things that you can do as a parent that you can support and not over accommodate and, help them to take those steps forward and validate them and do that emotion coaching and say, I'm here with you and I'm going to ride the wave of distress, but I'm going to be your calm in this moment because I am feeling distressed. But getting a psychiatry appointment right after going to the doctor seems like the best thing, but everybody's stressed at that time. And it's not magically just going to make everything go away because I have a diagnosis, even the medication. They don't just give you a full dose. And sometimes the medication works. Sometimes we need to fix it. Oh, this is not the right one, or we need to change the dose. And what they say is treatment and medication are the best mix. But what do you do when a child is resistant to treatment? Right? It's tough. It's
Yeah.
complicated. It's not like fixing a broken leg.
No, it's not. It's not. And it just continues. So what you're saying then as a parent, to go and find your own resources and to basically get yourself educated on how you can do some of these treatments at home.
Yeah. And treatment as in, I wouldn't say treatment because that's a lot of pressure, right? I don't want you to be doing treatment, but I do want you to understand some of the therapeutic interventions, the validation. I would consider like a therapeutic intervention. It's nice to hear from somebody to say, this sounds really hard for you right now. It sounds really hard because you've been trying really hard and you got an 80 and you were expecting to get a 90. And then your boyfriend broke up with you and lots of things going on for you right now. So it makes sense that you feel really sad and you feel really down. And that's why you started cutting or you don't feel like going to school. It doesn't mean that we're going to say, okay, we're just going to pack it all in and you can just stay home. It says, I hear you and your experience is valid. And how do we take one step forward?
I think your advice of starting with yourself, I think if I were to summarize everything you've just said, which is start with yourself.
Start with yourself.
Whether it's, reflecting what's triggering you, how you putting things out of curiosity instead of judgment, trying to educate yourself. I would say that your whole summary is start with yourself first, because that will help your kid.
Yeah. And I also want to validate to the parent that might feel like a lot of pressure to be like, great, everything's on me. Like, can anybody throw me a bone here? But you cannot control other people and you can control how you respond. Just find your people. And sometimes that takes a little bit of time too.
It does. And it takes a little bit of vulnerability too. I think if I were to tell anybody is that you got to sometimes crack that case and allow yourself to be vulnerable and realize even though everything is on your shoulders, there's somebody out there who can listen and can help you. Michelle, thank you so much. I appreciate having you on, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to This Way Up. I hope you're feeling a little lighter, a little brighter, and ready to take on whatever comes next. Remember, the journey of mental health is all about progress, not perfection. So keep climbing. And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lift.